All righty, boys and girls, welcome to a very jubilant episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue show, and not because Villa advanced out of the fourth round of the FA Cup for the first time in a decade yesterday. Okay, maybe a little bit. With your hosts, Alex, and the only man who hates Premier League referees probably more than Kendrick does Drake. It is Christopher Condit, your American villain voices. And despite the jubilant occasion, we will continue our promise to you, always serving up the lukewarmiest of lukewarm opinions. Socials, follow them, rate, review, subscribe. We've got our ticket giveaway contest coming up soon. So make sure you know where that comes from. Make sure you're following all of those because there will obviously be a bunch of promotion. Chris, I am tired. I am happy. I'm still living in a dream. Second Super Bowl victory, 2 appearances in 3 years. I know that you will probably never experience the joys that I am experiencing right now, but how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy about the result of the FA Cup and the draw and all those things that we're going to talk about today. And I'm glad that the Eagles won the Super Bowl. It's not like I can't be mad at it. It's not like we're rivals or I've just come to grips with the fact that I'm probably never going to see a Super Bowl from the Browns, and I have a much better shot with the other two teams, the Cavs and the Guardians. Like they're well-run organizations that have a chance to win, and the Browns will just never have that, and that's okay. That's just life. So, and congratulations on the win, though. It was the most boring Super Bowl in a while, but they all used to be like this. When I was much younger, and you were a gleam in your father's eye, this was every Super Bowl. They were all just terrible games. So, welcome to the late '80s to mid '90s.
I mean, listen, I fully acknowledge that game yesterday was not fun unless you have a severe hatred for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs and just a huge amount of Schadenfreude, or if you were from the great city of Philadelphia. Otherwise, I completely understand turning that one off. From my end, I was just giddy and laughing harder and harder at every single sack, seeing him just run around, seeing him fumble late, just like Tom Brady did. Shouts out to Nick Foles for probably the best tweet, actually, of any last night, where he said that Tom Brady is the Eagles' good luck charm in the Super Bowl. But Chris, we're not here to discuss the Eagles triumphantly ending their season. We are here to discuss Villa triumphantly continuing theirs. You may not see a championship in Cleveland, but maybe you will be able to see a trophy come back to Villa Park because things are shaping up nicely for Villa in the FA Cup. Before we get there, though, let's talk about how they took apart and played Spurs yesterday. So, tactical setup and approach. Daniel Mallon, as we said, got the start up top. I'm pretty sure you actually predicted this lineup man for man. So, well done. Still Garcia on the right-hand side. Cash still injured. What'd you think when you saw the names come out?
Expected, like you and I talked about on the pod. I had thought about maybe putting Rashford in on the left, but then as we discussed it and as we got to like predicting our lineups, it made a lot more sense for him to come off the bench. He hadn't played in a long time. Emery doesn't bring guys on that quickly, so it was the expected lineup. And I thought that pretty much. I know that. JJ scored minute 1, but pretty much from the start until the middle of the second half, and I know we're going to talk more about it later, but like the setup fit perfectly what Villa was trying to do. And I'll give Emery credit for his tactical approach, but I'm also going to have a problem with the way Ange Postecoglou set his team up. There was so much space in the midfield for Villa to operate. It was like you have to make some sort of adjustment there. If you look at the first goal, that JJ ended up scoring, what led to it was there are 3 midfielders in a triangle defensively, roughly 10 yards apart, So there is nothing but open space behind them. And if you can pick what ended up being a relatively easy pass, you're just sailing toward goal at that point. And that's what we saw over and over and over throughout the game, but especially in the first half. So the issue I think with that, with Tottenham and the way they set up and the way they're struggling this season, yes, some of it is due to injury, right? But it's not as if Villa aren't injured, right? It's just that the way they are setting up tactically, they're coming so far forward. And Porro on the first goal, if we're going to talk about that specifically, he just gets lost in the soup. I mean, he's way up at the midline, and then his tracking back is atrocious. He's 5-10 yards behind the play when the ball comes in. So this setup just isn't going to work unless Spurs can totally dominate possession for huge lengths of time. But out of possession, the game was there for Villa for the taking for the entire, pretty much the entire game. So the first goal was, I think, just an omen of things to come. And truthfully, I think Villa should have finished a few more, and it should not have been as close as it was.
I don't even think you have to say truthfully, like that's you going out on a limb. I
Right.
think anybody with eyes who watched the game thought that Villa should have been 6-7 to 1 clear. And we'll get into how we should feel about that later. Like you said, the interesting part for me was the mentality of the Spurs players combined with what you and I said in the lead up to this of Ange being a rigid manager, is not going to change the style that he wants to play, regardless of opposition, regardless of the players that he has available to him. And I think that this was incredibly emblematic of that. There might be a debate to be made that Van de Ven is actually the most valuable defender in the Premier League. There are defenders that are better for
Yeah,
sure,
yeah,
but with his
yeah.
recovery pace and tackling ability for the way that Ange wants to play, I would find it hard to say that there isn't a defender that is more crucial to the way maybe Pau Torres, and probably Van Dijk are up there as like the
Yeah.
three most valuable, important defenders for the way their managers want to play the game. And with all the injuries that Spurs have, I think part of the reason for the gaps that you so rightly are pointing out are two things. One, the guys that they have brought in due to the injuries do not have the energy, the legs, the pace, or the pressing ability that the guys that they're replacing are. So you can't necessarily play that high pressing, high octane style because they can't get to the ball. And then when they got there, and this is the mentality, this is the mentally fatigued and beaten that Spurs are, they don't want to make a tackle to save their life. They're coming in and it's Olay defending left and right. They're a step late. They're not coming in hard. They're not challenging the ball. They're just kind of dangling legs out there. And you saw Yori's ability to turn, McGinn's ability to turn all day long on the pitch. And the first goal, again, you kind of rightly said it. They come in, they don't double press Luka Dean the way that they're supposed to. They don't coordinate that attack. So he's able to dribble and split two guys with a little 1-2 with his own feet. Passes to Yori Tielemans. The three guys right there don't converge simultaneously, don't converge hard enough. No one cuts off the passing lane. He turns easily, plays Rogers. No one converges on him. And then he plays it through to JJ Ramsey. And like, it's just each step of the field, they didn't tackle quick enough. They didn't press hard enough. And that's exactly what the game was going to be. You saw it again in the 5th minute. McGinn immediately beat a half-hearted challenge once again. And then the other way, we talk about Spurs wanting to get on the break, get quick, play vertical as fast as they can. And you saw that for most of the match, outside of the opportunity that Son missed, is probably the only time that I can really think about it. Maybe there was one other opportunity. Villa was able to get back because Spurs wouldn't attack quick enough, get back very composed, very compact 4-4-2. And you just saw Spurs just going around the back line and back and back and back until they eventually lost it. And it was so slow and just lacking sort of any semblance of what I feel like the rest of the league has come to expect from Ange Postecoglou.
I agree, and I'm actually kind of surprised that he's still employed after that performance because that I don't think did Ange any favors. And anybody who has listened to this podcast for any length of time knows that I have sung the praises of Ange Postecoglou since he was hired, and it's it's strange to see it kind of fall apart this quickly. You know, we've talked about before, managers like this often have a shelf life because asking players to play this style is extremely demanding, and not everybody wants to do it. Not every player wants to do it. It's tough physically on the body, it's tough mentally, but to last 18 months, not even, you know, because they kind of fell apart at the end of the season last year. It's surprising to me that I mean the players out there, the amount of mental mistakes beyond just physical setup and how things were going, the amount of mental mistakes we saw out there were crazy, or lack of effort due to lack of legs or whatever it may be. It was crazy, and I think Tottenham fans have a right to be frustrated by it. But also, you have to give credit to Aston Villa because they took advantage of a team wildly out of form. The only thing that you would wish is that they finish a few more of those chances, because there were chances all over the pitch for Villa, particularly in the early going, but even in the mid to later part of the second half until Tottenham really started to try and get a goal into it. But it like I was pleased with the general overall play of Villa. I thought Morgan Rogers played very well. I thought that Daniel Malen looks pretty lively. You have to figure he's going to get his shooting boots as he beds in a little better, because he's always been known as a decent finisher. Finisher, pardon me. And I thought the other new boys that came in off the bench looked pretty good. I also really quick want to shout out Garcia on the right. I thought he played extremely well for the length of the match, and he looked pretty good in possession as well. Now, we talked about how Tottenham struggled to press effectively, and I think that's part of it. But I still like Garcia played very well, considering he's not been in the side long, and he was kind of thrown in because we have nobody else available. And that got worse as the game went on. But still, all in all, I think a very solid performance across the board by and large. You just wish that again, that we would put the team to the sword and this thing's over at halftime.
Yeah, it's funny. I was texting you and then I was texting my friend who's a Tottenham fan, who were both saying, "Ooh, we should be 2, 3, 4 clear by the break." And this was around like the 20th minute. And I said,
Yep.
"Yeah, but it'll be classic Villa to not be and still
Yep.
go in 1-0 down." And that's precisely what happened. That seems to be the story of our season. Now, before we get there, though, you brought up a few different things that I want to comment on. So I'll kind of go back to the beginning. What was so effective for Villa in how we were playing? How did we keep carving them open? I thought it was really interesting what Unai Emery tried to do, and it's not too dissimilar from the way we've played before, but I thought it was interesting how deliberate we were about it, and I think it was what he kind of saw in his scouting of Tottenham. So what I was noticing was that we were moving the ball fairly slowly. If we were, sorry, let me take a step back. When we're in their half, right, and we're trying to break down their back line, this is kind of what I noticed. We were playing the ball slowly, basically between the center backs and the two center mids, just waiting for them to come and try and press and ultimately step up on those guys. And once they did, every single time we were ready for it, we would play it out wide and create very easy 1-2s to attack. You talked about Poro and kind of his poor positioning and inability to defend, and it seemed like we were really targeting him in particular to play between Jacob Ramsey, Luka Dean, and Daniel Malen, kind of drifting out to that side. When we got the ball deep, that's when we tried to play it quick, get the spins. They wouldn't be able to press, and then play either Leon Bailey or Jacob Ramsey in dead on. And so those two methods of attack, it was funny. They were so effective and so consistent without any adjustment from Spurs' side. It almost looked like when you play FIFA and you figure out how the computer is just trying to play, and so you just look for the same thing over and over and over and over again. And it seems like that's all that we were able to, all that we had to do, I should say, to keep
Yeah.
creating these opportunities. It was kind of stupid. Um, but then Daniel Malin, I agree with you. You know, short of a goal, had an unbelievable game. I was very impressed with his burst of pace, his ability to dribble at pace. He actually showed pretty great strength. I think this was the first time. No, granted, he's only played, in 2, 3 games for us so far,
Yeah.
but the first time that I really saw, if you'll remember when we did the preview of him, the Bundesliga write up said that his most closest comp was Eden Hazard, actually, and the way that he kind of carried the ball and bounced off of challenges. And I would say that this is the first time that I really saw that, the way he was able to maintain his balance and ride the challenges of some of those defenders. So I found that interesting. Um, I thought his passing was pretty spot on. He had a couple nice crosses, 23rd minute, where he found Ramsey running down the middle, who ultimately had too heavy of a touch and went over the line. Um, and then his movement, some of the overlaps that he made to create space for Leon Bailey, or to ultimately get that cross that resulted in the second goal, I thought was really smart. What I take away from that is that I do not think his best position for us is going to be on either of the wings, replacing Ramsey or Leon Bailey. I think he's someone who needs to stay down the middle when Ollie Watkins is healthy again, probably alongside with now Morgan Rogers either moving out left or moving out right, depending on who's in form and what we're trying to do.
And I mean, the good news is that we'll have plenty of attacking options with the January window, and as of right now, everybody seems to kind of be hitting their stride. Obviously, with the exception of Watkins because he's out injured. But we'll see what happens with Asensio and Rashford. But even in their cameos, they both look good. But I thought Malin looks very, very solid. He carried the ball well, like you said. The only thing missing was he had a couple of pretty decent looks at it. There was one relatively early on that I think around the 20th minute or so, maybe a little bit before, where he put it over the bar, where he probably should have at least put it on frame and made the keeper work. But still, I thought a great game from him, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how Unai Emery deploys these attacking options going forward. That's the positive here, is that he's got a lot of tools now at his disposal, where you've largely upgraded pretty much every position where you were before based on the players that have come and gone. The only serious downgrade is just the ability of John Duran, but otherwise, like looking at Mullen now as a potential either player in the center, or as the guy who's going to take over up top to spell Watkins, you feel a little better about it now after a game like that, I think. So all in all, very positive on the attacking side for me. And the only thing, like I said, you just wish you knock in a few more of those and it's 3-4-0 at half, and we're sleeping in the second half and give up a goal.
Yeah, well, before we get to halftime, the other major incident of note in the first half, 23rd minute, Ezri Konsa, while running back towards our own goal on one of the through balls, pulls up, clearly a hamstring, clearly a strain, goes off right away. Thankfully, walks off under his own power, but Bogart came on. I actually thought that he did pretty decent defensively. I thought Emi Martinez clearly did not want to pass him the ball in any instance, but he was able to marshal and, obviously not really let much in behind him. He did lose tell for the goal, but whatever.
Still a perfect ball for that goal, though. I mean, it was even if he's there, it's going to be a tough
great
play.
Finish. But not without fault. But still, for a young player like that coming into that game in that situation, I thought he acquitted himself well. The real question is now, Chris, what the heck do we do at the center back position?
I don't know. I don't know, because it can't be Bogart and Kamara every day. That's like, you're very small in that lineup, right? Like those are two very small men. and also who both seem to be better suited to play defensive midfield. So you don't necessarily want them both back there. As I was looking to prep for the pod today, like looks like Mings may be getting closer to fit. There's some pods or some blogs out there that are thinking sometime around the 15th, but so far nothing concrete has come out on that. Just they're reading tea leaves here, so you're hoping he can come back. Obviously, Pau is out until March 8th, March 15th, something. I mean, another month more or less.
And then needs to get fit again beyond the injury. So,
so like you're going to have a tough time. And Kansa, we don't know yet. I searched the web to try and find any update on that. There's nothing yet. It's going to be a real challenge. I think that like putting the two players we had out there was fine for an FA Cup game against Tottenham. If we're having to play a lot of Premier League games against serious competition, no offense to Tottenham in the FA Cup, I think you're going to struggle to stop people from scoring, because we already do, right? We already give up a lot of chances. And even in the Tottenham game, Son probably should have scored that. It was a great save by Martinez to make the play. But yeah, it's a concern. And I don't know what your best move is at center back, having no healthy center backs now. We're in. I mean, I forgot about Disasi. He can play.
Disasi comes in as right center back, I think, which brings its own problem of, we said Emery likes to bed guys in slowly, and you're bringing him in with 1-2 weeks of training. I have to imagine. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I have to imagine he's going to start at the weekend. I don't think that it would be Bogart again. I actually do think that Bogart's long-term position is going to be center back.
Think so?
Just due to his offensive limitations. I think that's where he's going to wind up best, assuming that he can kind of bulk up a little bit, super young. I think that's where he has played growing up, more as a center back, and then like right back to defensive midfielder or like secondary positions. But that doesn't mean that I trust him to play, to your point, extended Premier League or Champions League minutes there now. So
or in a serious FA Cup run, if we're trying to win this thing, he's probably not the guy who's going to start at Wembley. If we get there.
So where we might have hoped that we would be able to see an Ezri Konsa Disasi center back pairing until a Mings or Pau Torres is back, obviously that's out the window now, and so we'll need to see. I'm nervous. I think
100%.
So, as you said, halftime, Villa did not make the most of their opportunities, particularly a one Jacob Ramsey. Second half, that theme would continue. I think the best way to sum it up is that Villa did enough, but still left it nervy and late. So, I think what I'd like to get your take on is Ange clearly made some adjustments at halftime, or Villa just fell off. But by the 55th minute, Spurs actually had a decent bit of possession. I think over the course of the first 10, they had like 71%. They certainly had momentum. And I would say that Villa were on top, less so due to the sake of their own defending and play, and more so Spurs' inability to make the right decision in the box. Kulishevsky, trying to pass it across instead of just blasting it at the net from 6 yards being one precise opportunity. What did you see different when we came out of halftime that really gave them this chance?
So I think that I think that the biggest change was in mentality, because it didn't appear to me to be tactical. I think that Postecoglou probably gave it to them in the locker room pretty good and got under them a little bit. And it wasn't as if like Villa were so dominant in the first half because Spurs couldn't get on the ball, right? That was not necessarily the case. It was Villa would get the ball in the midfield, turn up and go like we talked about here, breaking down the first half. So when you change and you started to see much more of that precise, fast moving attack from Spurs, you see more and more chances coming in toward the box. And when you have players that are out of position, like we had, and so did they, by the way, we can't be the only
Mhm.
ones crying injury here. But it seemed to me that it was natural that if Spurs were going to get a toehold in this game, this was going to be the moment to do it. And for a minute there, it looked like they were going to break through and make a play. But like I said, I think it was more about mentality than tactics, because the tactics to me didn't change all that much. It was what you expect from Postecoglou. I think it was just a matter of the players using their or players forcing their way into the game. That's what I wanted to say. Players forcing their way into the game to play the way that this setup is meant to play. Because when that team is working, we saw it early last year. They're as difficult as anybody in the league to beat. And I think that we saw flashes of it during the game on Sunday, just not an extended or a sustained threat throughout the game. Like we saw 5 minutes here, 15 minutes there, but never throughout the entire game where you really saw Spurs control the match the way they would like.
I think that's really fair. I wondered as you were kind of talking there, to what extent the Villa players, consciously or subconsciously, felt exactly what you and I were saying, that we should be 4-0 up right now. They're getting super lucky. And even though they were only 1-0 up, you feel like you're 4-0 up. You
Yeah.
feel like the game is done and dusted. And so they come out kind of sleepy in the second half, get punched in the mouth, and then, it takes them until honestly, what I almost noticed as the turning point was the 59th minute. You talked about what a great game Rogers, our lovely Kenny Rogers had, with all his gambling passes in the middle,
Oh God.
and all those beautiful through balls that he was playing. I mean, he really did pull all the strings yesterday, and so it's the 59th minute when he shows that classic Morgan Rogers strength when someone's literally trying to Super Bowl style NFL tackle him down, in this case Rodrigo Betancourt, that couldn't do it, and his ability to ride that challenge, draw the yellow. And I feel like that kind of break and play, but also just we got hyped. I'm sure the players get hyped kind of seeing
Yeah.
that happen. That almost like snapped us back to reality and knew, hey, we've still got a game to play here.
I think Ian Dark said that was 4 yellows on Betancourt during that run
Yeah.
because of because of how frequently and consistently he fouled Rogers during that run. And Anthony Taylor was trying to play advantage, but eventually you just can't. And I do think to some extent, we didn't mention this much. One thing that I think did potentially have an effect was Spurs were fouling a lot in the first half and in the early second. And I think it's because of what you said. It was a lack of defensive wherewithal or willingness to attack. So what you had was legs being dangled and late challenges coming in. And I think there was some frustration from the Villa side because it was persistent fouling, right? And I think that kind of breaks up the game. Some of it went uncalled, some got called, but no cards were given out until the hour mark there, or near to the hour mark. So I think there was some frustration from maybe the Villa players there that the game was kind of getting chopped up,
Yeah.
by the fouling. And that foul then where Rogers is just trying to bully his way through past the midfield line with Betancourt almost riding him like,
Like going for a piggyback rush.
yeah, going for a piggyback ride. Exactly. Um, I do think that did spur the team on, pun unintended there, but we'll roll with it. And we got the goal a short time later.
So yeah, let's jump right to that goal. I thought it was super well worked. Malen with a really smart run coming in from that, drifted out to the right, kind of ran in behind, was able to split the defensive midfielder and the center back, get the ball, carry it. Also was able to ride a challenge for a little bit.
Yep.
Finally on Bailey, who so patient, waits for Mullen to make that run around the back, lays it off with the perfect waiting, and then, as you've said repeatedly, put the ball in front of the net and let something happen. And that's exactly what Mullen does. Fires it in there, ball kind of bounces around, and ultimately Morgan Rogers is there to finish it.
Yeah, give credit to Rogers as well. I mean, you gave everybody else credit, but give credit to Rogers as well for crashing the net there and being there to
Yep.
clean up the rebound. But I think both goals you can say were just put the ball in front of the net and see what happens. I mean, Rogers on the first, I'm sorry, Ramsey on the first goal should have been saved. There's no question about that, but it wasn't. It went in. This
Mhm.
one, the ball bounces back and lands directly to Morgan Rogers. It was perfect. But I know we texted during the game. I have to highlight, you mentioned it. Leon Bailey is beyond Mullen's ability to create that chance. Leon Bailey is the reason that goal goes in, because he waits for what feels like an eternity, but it's probably only like 3 or 4 seconds near the end line until Mullen can finish that run, and then he plays an absolutely perfect ball across the face of goal because it's close to the goal line, but it's not so close that it can be picked up and cleaned up by the keeper. So
Mhm.
everything about that was, for me, like the best. That's the best version of not just Leon Bailey, but of Unai Emery's system. When you have those sort of plays down near the end line, because that's what ultimately Emery wants to create, is action funneling into the middle with the ball on either wing near the end line, and you're creating angles there that are difficult to defend. And I thought that was just a perfect goal and needed, obviously a necessary goal that ended up being the winner. And it really helped me feel a lot better as the second half progressed, because I knew 2-0 up. Yeah, Spurs had some threat, but I was able to kind of put my mind at ease personally there, thinking like, all right, we're probably going to come away with this one now.
Yeah, I thought Leon Bailey had an incredible game yesterday. I can only think of one instance where he made the wrong, not even the wrong decision. It was the right decision, but it was a misplaced pass that went a little too strong over the end line while Garcia was making an overlapping run. Other than that, I thought he was effective on the ball. He made some really nice passes. I thought he was very good defensively, covering for Garcia in a lot of instances, really strong in the challenge. The two shots that he took, I thought were the right decision and well-shaped efforts. Probably the only thing that I would fault him on is on the second shot that got saved. So he cuts into the middle, and Daniel Malen once again is kind of overlapping. He's probably around-ish the penalty spot. I saw some stuff saying that he should have laid it off to Mullen. I actually thought Archie Gray was shading the Mullen overlap, ultimately would have intercepted that pass. I think Bailey reads that, and so he tries to curve it in his left to the right of the keeper. I probably would have wanted to see him shape up for that and then close his hips last minute. You know how much I like that wrong footing the keeper shot to the near post. But other than that, I thought he had a really good game, and hopefully, the added competition. We've said we believe that he's a player that kind of thrives on that and elevates his game. Bringing in Rashford, Malin, Asensio, hopefully that helps him elevate his game to another level. I think if yesterday was any indication, hopefully it did.
Yeah. Also easy for us to sit here in chairs and tell a Premier League player to just open up his hips, right? just just open up your hips and shoot, man. What are you doing?
He's got the
So
talent.
uh, but yeah, I agree. I thought that Bailey had a great game, and I'm always happy to see it because you and I have talked about it. He's one of my favorite players. He's one of your favorite players to watch. He's such a talent, and I really want to see him continue to do well and grow into his game and what we know he can be. But yeah, so all in all, positive, and I loved everything he did, and I think I appreciate that you highlight his defensive work, because I don't think that gets discussed enough here or around the Villaverse.
Absolutely. So let's wrap up this game with some of Leon Bailey's competition.
Yeah.
What'd you think of early returns of Asensio and Marcus Rashford? Let's just talk about them in conjunction.
Positive for both. I thought that Asensio looks very good. Like that touch and back heel. I mean, if you don't get excited about that, I don't know what you're watching. So if you have that sort of thing happening, if he can do that, like we may be talking about more than just an FA Cup run. You know, if we can create that sort of excitement in the midfield. Not saying that's going to happen, and Rashford, I thought like looked rusty in terms of his touch, but he looked fit, he looked excited, he looked lively out there. But if there was one weak point, and it's because he hasn't played in 2 months, his touch was just a little off, and I think that with more reps and more time in the side, I think we'll see that come around. And like we talked about when we discussed the transfer, if anybody's going to get a tune out of him, it's going to be Unai Emery.
Yeah, Asensio was really giving me Coutinho loan vibes, where this guy comes in and just has an instinct and skill on the ball that is unlike anybody else in the side at present. The things that he was just willing to try, that came off the positions that he was going to take up, uh, was very novel, and I think brings a different dimension to the squad. Rashford, you said it, clearly rusty, but willing to run. I thought pressing was solid. 88th minute, like when he's in on goal, and that
Thought he was
last
going to
time
score.
just runs
Yeah.
right to the keeper was absolutely atrocious. But we'll kind of put that aside. The interesting part that I noticed with the two of them, I guess, is more tactically. I think what we saw out of them. So Asensio wound up pushing Morgan Rogers to the right hand side. So even though Leon Bailey came off and Asensio is left footed, plays that right midfield, right wing role, it doesn't seem like that's where Unai Emery sees him. So maybe not direct competition for Leon Bailey, at least in the majority of his appearances. And then Marcus Rashford, I kind of understand why he doesn't want to play striker. He basically was just a second left winger alongside Jacob Ramsey, and we
Yeah.
kind of just like abandoned any semblance of having a central striker when he was out there, and that's fine if that's where his natural instinct takes him and where he's going to be best. Unai Emery said as well, he sees him playing off the left. This was probably just a little bit of a test to play him down the middle, but I don't think that he's necessarily any backup or challenge for Ollie Watkins or Daniel Mallon in that number 9 spot.
I agree. I think it's 100% going to be those two. And like you said, Emery said it, and I think it's clear from his entire career, pretty much, that Marcus Rashford is best coming from the left. And I didn't think it felt crowded over there while they were playing that way. When
No,
Rashford came in. Now, against different competition, it might. But I don't. I think this was a chance just to get him to get his legs out there and play in a competitive game. I don't think if things are going well, we're going to see Marcus Rashford playing any semblance of a number 9 role. I think it's going to be, like you said, Watkins and Mallon.
right. Anything else that you got on the 90 minutes?
No, I'd like to have kept a clean sheet, but that was a really nice ball and a really nice finish from Tell. So that's the only negative, is just the lack of clean sheets. They're still out there, but 2-1, 2-1 winner, and we
And if you're
move on.
not going to do it, then I mean, I don't know why you're going to do it. If you can't get it against Spurs in their current incarnation. The only other bad point that I
What
had, I
about
don't
Cardiff
have any.
City?
I don't have, I don't have any good points other than everything that we already mentioned. Ramsey's finishing terrible. Had 6 potential one-on-ones with the keeper and only scored 1 due to the keeper making arguably howler of the year.
Had a hat trick
If
of
it's
misses.
him, I
Yeah.
love the positions that he's getting into and the dribbling and the connection. But if that's going to be your finishing, I think we might see Marcus Rashford sooner than we expected.
He does have 10 consecutive games of goal involvement, though. I did want to point that out. That was from Villa's Twitter
That's
account
impressive.
today. So, yeah. Yeah,
That's
10
actually really
consecutive
impressive. I was unaware.
games. Yeah.
Um, so larger implication on the season, as you just teased, Cardiff City at home in the next round in the quarterfinal, which means we really have a chance here. And the rest of the draw was actually fairly good for us. Only Man City is the only other Premier League team to not draw Premier League opposition. So that's great news for us. It also comes at a good time in the calendar. So the prior game will be Crystal Palace away on a Tuesday, and that would be February 25th. We then play Saturday, March 1st, and we don't play again until we travel to Brentford away a full Saturday later on March 8th. So not really a need to rotate the squad or anything like that. We'll pretty much get 2 full weeks on each side of the match and can really give it our all.
I had a lot of the same notes that you had there. Like draw wise, you couldn't have asked for much better. Assuming that Nottingham Forest beat Exeter City tomorrow, there will be 11 teams from the Premier League, but there will be at least 4 eliminated in the next round. So, like that is crazy good luck in the draw. The only luck that's better than Villa's in this is Man City. And I have to give credit again to AVFC Stato because he's all over this sort of stuff. In the last 9 years, Alex, you ready for this? In the last 9 years, Man City have only drawn Premier League competition once in the 5th round. It was Luton Town last season. Every
No way.
other year, they've been lower league competition. Like that level of luck is incredible, or incredible oil, if you want to play a pun, play on words. Yeah.
Shout out Jeff Webb in the group chat said, of course, Man City got Plymouth. By the way,
Well,
he was on to this stat.
yeah, I am not.
Webb's credit.
I'm not complaining about the draw, like Villa versus Cardiff or Man City versus Plymouth. Like they're both bottom of the championship. I think there's 5 points between them. Cardiff is 19th, but it's still a favorable draw and still at home. But I just like that luck. That's crazy. Like that you just the one Premier League side you draw is Luton Town, who were struggling to stay afloat in the Premier League and obviously did not. But anyway, yes, I agree with you. Now is the time to actually go for this competition, which is something that Emery did not do last season. But I think you're going to see a change this year, and I think you're going to see him go for it because it's such a good chance to win. And like you mentioned, the fixture congestion is not there due to the fact that Villa have made the final 8, or the top 8, I should say, of Champions League. Because if you look at like Man City's schedule, because they have to play in the playoffs, they have 8 or 9 games over the next 26 days. They have to play an absolute ton of games. We have 1 or 2 less than that over the same period. So it's a positive for Villa here, and obviously lifting some silverware would be great. We've talked about it a million times here on the pod.
Yep. So you basically transitioned us perfectly into cold water. If you are watching on YouTube, you probably saw the banner popped up there because I just thought Chris was going to run right for it without any sort of prompting. But
well, I'm not good at that though.
I think I know what you're going to say to this one. We'll throw it up anyway. The first take to see if you're pouring any frigid cold water on this. With the draw going the way it did, the FA Cup should be Villa's top priority for the rest of the season.
I say no cold water to that, and here is why. Not just for the chance to lift silverware, right? This is potentially our best chance to make Europa. The FA Cup winner gets an automatic bid to the Europa League. And the way the season has gone, if we're just being realistic, it looks like it's going to be difficult for Villa to qualify for Europa League via the league table. So if we can do it via the FA Cup, still a successful season, still in Europe, still competing that way. And I think that would be a great thing. And then obviously the allure of lifting a trophy is a huge thing. And I don't know in terms of the breaks, the way things have fallen, that you're going to get a better chance at it than you have right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we said this at the beginning of the season. First uh first priority is the league. Second is Champions League because who knows when we'll be back. And then we said it was the League Cup because of the fixture congestion at the time. And we said then, if you get to a quarterfinal, if you get to a semifinal, everything else changes, right? Um, but a round of 16, whatever it is. So we are now at the point where it changes. We are into a point in the competition now where not only is there no fixture congestion because we're not in the playoffs of the Champions League, but also, you look at the teams that have been eliminated. Arsenal out, Liverpool out, Chelsea out. There is a chance that after the next round, Forest, Brighton, Bournemouth, Newcastle, all some of those teams are also now out. How many of those do you really need to beat to get through? We just beat City. We beat a lot of these teams or played well against them already,
Mm-hmm.
with the exception
Mm-hmm.
of maybe Newcastle. And so for the opportunity to get into Europa, for the opportunity to potentially win silverware, much more likely than the Champions League, as much as I hate to admit it. Yeah, I think it absolutely needs to become the top option this year. Now, thankfully, as we just kind of said, we're not at a point now where we necessarily need to choose the FA Cup versus these other ones. But I do still think that all of a sudden now this has elevated to top priority for me, and I would love to see us really make a go at it.
Right. Yeah. And I think the other thing that we didn't mention is largely we're going to have to play a strong side because we just don't have a lot of players left anymore. There's a lot of injuries now, so Unai Emery doesn't have a whole lot of opportunity to play a lesser side. I'll do the second cold water here because I feel like this was written for a certain person to go off, and I'll let you guess who that person might be. As excited as we are at advancing, we should actually be nervous. The team showed its weakness in only winning 2-1 against a hilariously out of form Spurs side. Alex, do you pour any cold water on that statement?
Not really, no. I might pour some room temperature water on it, but this has been something that you and I have discussed repeatedly throughout this season. From probably like match 3, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like we started this conversation of, is it the results or is it the performances? And I know where you fall out on this. At the end of the day, a win is a win. I'm taking the points, whatever. I certainly did a little bit of a victory lap when we went on that losing run. And I said, I was telling you through all the games that we won that this was coming. I guess where I would ultimately net out on this, if I were to tweak it, would be to say that I am not reassured by beating Spurs.
Mm-hmm.
Just came off of a really disappointing 2-0 loss to a Wolves side that conceded 52 goals so far this season. We showed no attacking threat whatsoever. And to a team that we really should keep to a clean sheet and collect 3 points from, couldn't do it. And, I think we had like one, even though we hadn't necessarily lost a bunch of matches, we only had like one win in our previous 5. Beating Spurs 2-1, as good as the team looked and the opportunities that we carved out, I still see the same issue of potential inability to finish. At least we created the opportunities, but also inability to defend on the other end. And now we lost more defenders. So, yes, I am excited to advance. And ultimately, in a competition, that's what you got to do, survive and advance. It's not necessarily like the Premier League where it's about accumulating points or goal differential or anything like that. You just got to advance. But for anyone who is looking at the match and saying, we dismantled Spurs, should have been 6-1, like we're fine, King Unai, whatever. It's not like I'm going to go into our predictions for this weekend and be like, yep, 4-0 victory, lock it in, like we look great. So, yeah, that's kind of how I feel about this one. Like, is it a hot take? Sure. But on the scale of pouring frigid cold water on something, no, I'm not doing that either.
I'll pour some cold water on it. Only because the result is the result. Like you said, I am a results guy. I look at results more than form, and to an extent, yes. Like, you need to have some concern. Ezri Konsa is out. That's a huge concern, because we just have nobody healthy to play center back. The lack of finishing is a concern. You'd be foolish not to be at least a little bit concerned about it. So I can't totally say no, there's no validity to this at all. So that's why I'm only pouring a little bit of cold water, because yes, you should have some concerns going forward, but ultimately, as you said, in this competition or in any cup competition, it's about moving on, and we've done it, and we've gotten a favorable draw going forward. Obviously, we don't want to count our chickens, because we'd end up looking like all those people that thought Plymouth was easy competition there, and now
I mean,
they're
it's
sitting
in
at
our
home.
semi-recent history, right? What was
Yep.
it, Bradford?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. So I think that there's reason for some concern, but if you also consider that we're betting in a bunch of new players in attack in particular, um, there's reason to believe that potentially some of that concern will be alleviated, once they get a little more time. But still, based on the 90 minutes we saw, yes, it's absolutely fair to say, well, we created a lot of chances, but we didn't finish a lot of them, particularly JJ Ramsey, as we mentioned. And also, it's fair to say, it's a really out of form Spurs side, and we gave up a goal. It was a really good goal, but it would be good to keep a clean sheet. I think that Emi Martinez has 3 clean sheets in the Prem this year, and then a couple in the Champions League, and that's it. I don't think it's
Young
very good
Boys
at
was
all.
1, Bologna was 2, and that might be it.
Yeah. So, given the
Oh, and
amount of
Bayern,
games we
right?
Bayern 1-0.
Yeah,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
3 in the
given the
Champions League.
amount of games that we've played, it's not necessarily a great record for clean sheets. So that given that we have the best goalkeeper in the world, you'd expect to have more, but he's under consistent pressure. So yes, concerns, but ultimately, let's be happy we won. Let's be happy that we look good doing it by and large, and we've got a game to look forward to at the weekend that we'll preview later, and then hopefully we're talking about a run to Wembley in the FA Cup.
I think that's a great spot to end it. Optimistic, positive, true to your Midwestern roots. We will be back on Thursday, most likely, with our preview for this weekend. So keep an eye out for that. And then Chris and I get to watch the match and then hang out together, bring in the families. And it's going to be a great day out in Pittsburgh. We're making the long drive out. So,
Long drive. What are you? What are
yeah.
you, British now? Where driving 30 miles is like unheard of.
Yes, exactly. Says the man who drove up to Delaware this past Saturday, but that's neither here nor there. Basically the same thing. Pittsburgh, Wilmington, Delaware, same
Pretty
distance.
much. Yeah.
Yes. Well, anyway, I will see you in a couple days, my friend. Until then, up the villa.
Up the villa.
Hi, Mom and Dad.